Hello and welcome back. Generic intro catchphrase. Today we're going to be talking about books. Now, I'd like to get into Russia, but hopefully I'll have somebody on. Hopefully I'll have somebody on in the next episode, possibly. And that's pretty much all we're going to do. But today, I've mentioned some books before. I've tried to talk about it, just didn't have any time. So I'll go over some books that I think are really important at this time. So today, the word of the day is books.
Butterfly in the sky, I can go twice as high. Take a look, it's in a book, a reading rainbow.
Hopefully I don't get a copyright strike for reading rainbow. So, books. Hold on a second. Wow. Tea, Earl Grey, very hot. So, first book I'll mention is the book of all books. You should hear some of the new stuff that Jordan Peterson is saying about the Bible. Somebody who believes in God, believes in the Bible, doesn't believe Jesus is who Jesus says he is, not in the way that Jesus says he is. There's nothing that I've heard coming out of his mouth that would lead me to believe that he is indeed has received salvation, but that he is on a good path towards salvation. Though a lot of times philosophy can provide more obstacles in your way than a clear path to salvation. So especially this time, my goodness. Now, the name of this podcast is Can't Wait Till the World Ends. That's true. I'm not freaking out over here. I know that, hey, the world's going to get worse and worse and worse and worse until it gets better, right? It's going to happen in a flash. It's not anything the man's going to do. Jesus is going to come back. Jesus is going to make everything right. Jesus is going to destroy all the adversaries at the height of the worst that mankind has to offer. It's also interesting. I think it's interesting that sincere intellectuals, people with they don't have money in the game, right? They're playing their own game, the wild cards, like I've said time and time again. Elon Musk and Jordan Peterson are two people that have been talking about this. While we've heard for generation after generation that our biggest crisis we face is overpopulation, they're saying that population collapse is far more possible, and that maybe there is as many people on the earth right now, or close to it, as will ever exist. What a time for the end to come. So, there's a lot of stuff happening. That's why I want to get into Russia. It's not just this isn't like when America went into Afghanistan to bomb the Taliban. This is stuff that reads like the beginning of World War I, World War II type thing. And so anyways, books. Let's get into books. Now, you might not want to hear this episode because, hey, I don't really like books. And I'm talking to everybody, but I'm talking to the men who have man caves, that sit down in these man caves and play video games and watch cartoons. Oh, anime. Sorry. Not that I don't partake in my own share of Studio Ghibli, right? So men have studies. Men study and become more they become more mentally and philosophically and spiritually strong. It's like that movie War Room, only, if that's all you got is a closet, then use a closet. I'm using a corner of one of my child's rooms right now. So, study to show thyself approved. So, I'm going to say the Bible, right? The Bible, you want to know what's going on right now, the Bible's the playbook. You want to know how to live your life, the Bible's the playbook. You want to know some real deep philosophy, you want to know some lessons to learn, you want to know what's the secret to life, the universe, and everything. Spoiler alert, it's actually not 42. So, the Bible. It's as Jordan Peterson would say, it is the beginning of literature, right? So there's a couple other books that I would suggest along the biblical line. It's in my my combat bag, right? I got a. It's an old pistol bag. Maybe I'll show it sometime. I don't have it in here, but it's got a Bible. It's got the Book of Enoch. It's got the Book of Jasher, and it's got the Pilgrim's Progress. And there's lots of other Christian books that I would suggest. The Book of Enoch. Some people think it's legitimate. Some people don't. I actually do. I've said before the reason I think so is there's the reason I think that it's only becoming more popular now is because this is who the Book of Enoch was written for. The far off a generation, not this generation, but the one afar off, which will be there during the great day of God's wrath. So the Book of Jasher it's not scripture. It's mentioned in the Bible. It's a history book. It's a history book that's a companion to the Bible. It's more apt to be fallible, but it's a very interesting read. It goes into more detail on what happened after Noah came across on the ark and the trials that Abraham had. And the Pilgrim's Progress is just, it's all analogy, but it is a masterpiece of Christian understanding. I mean, it's like it's got as much theology as mere Christianity, while having some of the entertainment factor of Narnia. Right? Good book by John Bunyan. So that aside, the next three books I'm going to talk about are 1984 by George Orwell. Everybody by now should be familiar with this work. I mean, it's especially with all the new tyrannical systems that the government's coming up with, all the new, especially the way that all the information you're getting from the establishment sources is fake, and it's usually backwards, right? Just like in George Orwell, peace is war, love is hate is love is hate. They have a lot of canceled. Almost everything's canceled, and it's not woke in George. Anything that doesn't go along with the establishment is cut out. That's the main character. His job is to rewrite history, right? See a lot of that going on today. I mean, this guy's basically Howard Zinn, the guy who wrote A People's History of the United States, which is a great book about the biggest whiners of any point in history. And I'm not trying to marginalize anyone. What I'm saying is, if you took the most token millennial Antifa, hates our government, hates Christianity, and said, let me hear your version of current events. It's going to be a lot different than Joe everybody. It's going to be a lot different than somebody who's really studying prophecy, really aware of what's going on. Now you take that guy of every generation and use only that guy as sources, and you get a people's history of the United States. And people, colleges require that for reading. It's atrocious. I've read it myself. It's very disingenuous. There's something you can learn from everything, right? Even that book, there's something you can learn, and especially when he's talking about the Voyages of Columbus. Before he gets started, he talks about how these other biographies, they say that some bad stuff happened, and then they put it in a little, like a sentence or a paragraph, as if making a little note of it, shrinking it down. It's still a big issue, and that's wrong. And then he does the exact same thing about the indigenous people when the conquistadors came and they were sacrificing tens of thousands of people and cutting their hearts out while they're still alive, and for blood gods, and a lot of bad stuff. There's history is more complicated than our cut and dry what we want to believe in, our very sterile, very we're so used to order, honestly, and safety and security. We don't realize what life was like for most thousands and thousands and thousands of years of humanity was not in this bubble, this ball pit with lifeguards that we live in right now. So anyways, you got 1984, you got A Brave New World, which takes a different, instead of The Brave New World, where there's a famous quote about imagine a boot on the face of mankind forever, throughout history. A Brave New World is what you see more of today in our Western industrialized countries, where they control people with pretty much sex and drugs, right? And there's a lot of interesting stuff, especially given that it was written in the 30s, I believe. It was written a long time ago, but it's about genetic engineering. People are actually bred for their jobs. It's about a lot of sexualizing children, and it teaches how they through the education system capture people's minds, make them slaves to entertainment and extracurricular stuff. Pay them in drugs, and the world's working pretty good. Why mess with that, right? Fahrenheit 451. That's the only hard copy. I had this tendency to buy a book, read it, and give it away. I kind of wish I had some of these books in hard copy now. I don't. I'm not sad that I gave it away. Maybe somebody will read it, right? Maybe. So Fahrenheit 451. So they got a movie. Right, I'm sure all these have a movie, right? Fahrenheit 51 has a new movie. I think Michael B. Jordan or whatever's in it, and it is just horrible. It's horrible. Nothing like the book. I mean, you don't get the same thing out of the book. The same kind of stuff doesn't happen. It's maybe there's some movies that are just like there's some movies that are pretty close enough that a lot of people are happy with it. They don't really make the fan base angry like Lord of the Rings type books, but then you got stuff that deviates some. Oh, The Road, horrible stuff happens in The Road, but it's a pretty interesting book, and the movie is almost frame from frame from the book. So Fahrenheit 451, we're talking about burning books. We're talking about canceling people and neighbors, policing neighbors. All these books are about neighbors policing. You're policed by your family and friends. It's the Bible talks about a time when your family and friends will give you up to be put to death, thinking that they are doing the will of God. So these people are keeping humanity safe by turning you in and keeping all these. This is about mindless entertainment. This is about Kanye West and the Kardashians is all you're allowed to watch. And you got TVs. You got it actually. Yes, you're in the metaverse. In this book, they're in the metaverse, right? If you're rich enough. You start out with if you're poor, you only got one screen, right? It takes up the entire wall, but you only get one screen. But eventually, you're sitting in your living room and you see nothing but you're in virtual reality. And I see this not too far out of the realm of possibility. The TV actually talks to you. So when you're watching your shows, they mention you by name personally. They got you programmed in there. So those are the big three of speculative, the trilogy of speculative fiction, right? Most of them are written around the same time. George Orwell, of course, was a student of Aldous Huxley. Aldous Huxley says that A Brave New World is more likely. His book is more likely to happen than 1984. Ray Bradbury wrote Fahrenheit 451. It looks like the first copyright is in 51. Anyways, I think it's a mixture of all of these books. You can put these in a I would say blender, but now what do you call it? A food processor. You put it in there and blend them up, and you get 2022, right? That's the new one. 2022, a braver, newer Fahrenheit 451. So the next three books are very very profound in what man can do to man in the modern world, right? So this is all stuff that happened not too long ago, and this is all stuff that happened not too long ago. Some of it's firsthand accounts. Some of it is somebody who's researched and uses firsthand accounts. The first one is Gulag Archipelago, Alexander Solzhenitsyn. It's about his experience going from an army captain to less than human in a gulag for years and years. It's heartbreaking. It reminds me a lot of the Stanford experiments, which very profound research there. A lot of it, I think, is unethically manipulated one way. I won't say unethically. I would say that that Laszlo, is that his name? Anyways, Stanford experiments. The professor definitely had an ideological leaning. They got rid of some people from the experiment that probably wouldn't have, so it doesn't reflect exactly what this population sample would have done in that situation, because a lot of very deeply Christian people weren't allowed to participate. So anyways, Gulag Archipelago, he goes into his personal experience. He also goes into how they get your neighbor to police you, how they collected people. So you think, especially like right now, like how would they be able to take all these important people, all these figure without anybody knowing? Well, they did some pretty sneaky stuff to get people into a gulag, out of sight, out of mind, and without causing a fuss, without having, and they did horrible things to him to get them to confess to horrible things that never happened. And there's too many people that think, I won't do that. Never. I will. I'll give you an example, right? With this whole COVID thing, it made a lot of people that had very strong, deep beliefs make very hard decisions. And, personal experience. I'm with another person who believes the same way I has believed the entire time, right? An ultimatum comes down. Before the ultimatum comes down, the day before, they say, give me liberty or give me death. Unknowingly quoting Patrick Henry. They don't have enough knowledge of American history to even know who Patrick Henry is or where that came from. Anyways, and then by the end of the next day was trying to convince me to go against my beliefs as well. So, there's until you're tested, and that's nothing. That's nothing. I mean, nobody had their life or possibly some icing on the cake, some maybe a little bit of their prosperity, maybe a little bit of their extravagance was threatened to be taken away from them, but no life. No loss of liberty or freedom, or just a little bit of extravagance. It was the only thing they risked. So people will turn a lot faster than you think. Viktor Frankl, man's search for meaning. He's invented logotherapy, which should be used, in my opinion, a lot more than psychotherapy. Right? Logotherapy is is not blaming all the problems of your life on somebody else, but seeing the hardships that you had to go through as using that as motivators to become a better person, right? So logotherapy has helped me out a lot. It's a lot of the kind of thing that Jordan Peterson talks about. It's what the Bible promotes, and it's how some people live bitter and imprisoned to medication for their mental health, and some people are happy-go-lucky and free and went through horrible things and are able to not only be you get damaged by it's damage. You got scars. That's great. Your scars are what drives you forward, right? Your burns should all be on the back of your body because it's pushing you forward. You're not going to live there and let your life be engulfed in flames and become miserable and worthless. So Viktor Frankl, it's this book. The Gulag Archipelago made me cry. Viktor Frankl, you can't read stories especially about what has happened to children, especially the children of people who have been put in concentration camps, without crying, right? Tears will come to your eyes. Ordinary Men, that's very applicable right now when there's so many people are against the police force because of what's going on. First, you had one side of the aisle being against the police force because of the demonization of groups like Antifa and BLM, defund the police. Police are evil. Police are trying to hunt down certain minority groups. There's no good ones, and all this slander against the police force. And now you got it from the other side, saying, after these riots the freedom truckers and the police are rioting. They're beating the truckers and threatening them and all this. And so what a time to be a police officer. Yes, hang in there. Good, I hope the good ones don't leave, because if you're going to scare all the good ones out, then what? It's kind of like that the joke at the end of Joker. What do you get? Oh, what you deserve. Okay, Ordinary Men is about a police force in the Nazi pushed into Poland and into Western Russia, and it's about the horrible things. It's called Ordinary Men because these weren't 20-year-old, been indoctrinated by the Nazis their entire life. These were like upper 30s, 40-year-old, 50-year-old men that weren't Nazis, that had families, that ended up doing horrible things, and it shows that process. And it's a lot easier to find yourself in this situation. That's why you need to read these books to understand how this happened to them and make sure it doesn't happen to you. Okay, I call that the unholy trinity of history, and so you got Gulag Archipelago, Man's Search for Meaning, and Ordinary Men. This went a little bit longer on just those books, so I'll go into a few more that I think are really profound. Everybody should the Rape of Nanking. That's about what the Japanese did to the Chinese. That is horrible. If there's ever been a book, all these books are good for the promotion of the citizenry owning the means to defend themselves, firearms. Rape of Nanking is probably one of the best for that, right? There's on the social contract by Jean-Jacques Rousseau, right? Thomas Jefferson was a big fan. Well, you'll see a lot of the inspiration for the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution in there. So at the end, towards the end of it, you get into religion. Totally am not on Rousseau's page when it comes to religion, and I don't think he would be either if he, saw the outcome of the French Revolution. All secular revolutions end in reigns of terrors and counter revolutions. Happened in France, happened in Russia. Usually it's a bad deal. So a lot of that stuff it also helped inspire the Communist Manifesto, a good read, right? Look into the mind of Karl Marx. You're really not looking into the mind of Karl Marx, right? So it's by Karl Marx and the guy he leached off of. What is that dude's name? Frederick Engels, right? So it's about him, when he couldn't leech off his parents or his family anymore. And if you want to get into it, so there's a part in the Communist Manifesto where it says some people say we're coming to take the families and everything, and then it says they're right. I love that he's very honest about the outcome of, and he is also honest about use anybody. If the socialists are against the capitalists, then you use the socialist if the Buddhists are against the capitalists, you use the Buddhist until the Buddhists are gone, and then you get rid of the Buddhist, right? So there's another book that's a real big look into Karl Marx, and that's The Devil and Karl Marx by this is Paul Kingor. He's a dark dude. Darwin was a dark dude too, right? These guys didn't pop out of nowhere. They were getting some help from some pretty nasty places, right? And these people did some pretty nasty things. Darwin was a sadist, and Karl Marx stunk, right? So right after reading on the social contract, I read Hope in for this Present Crisis by Michael Youssef, and it picks up. It's like it picks up right out. It could be the sequel, except it explains why Rousseau's wrong with the religious part, right? With all the secularism, it explains why it's wrong. It's some really good stuff. Of course, Maps of Meaning by Jordan Peterson is one that I've read, but it's written not for the layman, but for his peers, right? It's a very hard read. So is one that he recommends, Good and Evil. What is it? It's Beyond Good and Evil by Friedrich Nietzsche. Very hard read. I didn't like it. I don't like a lot of what Nietzsche has written. I like mostly of what he was writing when he went insane, right? He went crazy. A.K. Homo. He was pretty much gone insane in the membrane. Love that book. So can't quit without talking about Dostoevsky. This guy understood some complications in human nature. Crime and Punishment. I'm almost done with The Brothers Karamazov, which is pretty good, but Crime and Punishment is very cut and dry. I mean, it gets right in there, and it gets exciting at some points, like not in a suspenseful way, and it deals with some hard issues, especially like a lot of these books will make you look at people who are pretty nasty and see the humanity in them and realize that they are humans and are in need of salvation just as much as you are. And there's a young prostitute in this book, Sonia, right? When you see where she ended up, how she ended up, your heart's going to break for her, right? You see a lot of redemption, a lot of moral dilemmas in this book. I mean, it's like packing a season of Next Generation into one book, right? So, Crime and Punishment. Irreversible Damage. This is about the transgender movement, especially how it almost didn't exist at all in young women, and now it's primarily in young women, and how young women are butchering their bodies. Irreversible. How and it's written by a very liberal woman who's very. I don't think I like this girl's book. We could probably agree on some stuff, but we wouldn't be sitting down talking about politics. But this is one of the best, well-researched and well-written book on the subject. Irreversible Damage. Get it while you can before it's burned. Before they burn it, all these books are going to go somewhere in here where they pile them all up and burn them, right? Especially the Bible. The Parasitic Mind was a good one. It's about academia, how they're suppressing certain schools of thought. Another good one is by Thomas Sowell is a genius. And his books are very, very, they're very intellectual books, especially his book Intellectuals and Race, right? But they're written in a way that even the simplest, humble guy can get through them and understand a lot. Another one, Against a real logotherapy book, kind of that using your past. Using the bad things as your past as a motivator, not dwelling on them, not blaming everybody else for your shortcomings. Up from Slavery by Booker T. Washington. That is a great book. I did have that on audiobook. I do still have it on audiobook. I was playing that for my kids. We haven't got through all of it, but it's something that everybody should read that book, right? All these everybody should read. That's a good one. Road to Wigan Pier. There's a class iniquity. I mean, we're just talking about white people in England, pretty much. Okay. Apparently, I had my camera set to stop recording at 30 minutes, so I'll have to splice that together. Did not expect to go that long, but let's just get through the rest of this and hopefully we'll have more fun. Hopefully we'll have somebody to talk to next time. If not, we're going to talk about Russia, okay? Just hold your horses. We're going to get to Russia. We might be speaking Russian by then. A lot of these books come from, of course, gulags, right? Alexander Solzhenitsyn, he's Russian. Dostoevsky is Russian. Anyways, there's another one called The Painted Bird. I think I've talked about this before. It's about a kid that's sent away by his parents because he looks Jewish. He looks like a gypsy. They're trying to keep him away from the Nazis, and he ends up spending the next, I think it's 6 years altogether, from the time he's 6 years old to 12 years old. It takes the most innocent of innocence, and it throws every bad thing that can possibly happen. And this is the one book I've ever read where I was dry heaving at parts in this book. It's so hard to get through, but I've never looked at a human being the same after reading this book. So you got to have a strong constitution to get through it. But I highly, highly recommend, if you need a little compassion for your fellow man, read this book. So I'm going to end with my man, Voltaire. Because in exploring all these philosophers and political commentators and people who have went through, I've not enjoyed anyone more than Voltaire, who I thought I would hate. Because I've heard, he said that nobody would read the Bible in 50 years. Well, he was a little bit off. I mean, he was pretty much right. I mean, here we are, a couple hundred years later, and nobody's reading the Bible. They might go through their daily affirmations. They might go through their verse of the day on their Bible app. But how many people? Show of hands. Who's read their Bible cover to cover? Anybody? There's a few over there. Hey, all right, learning experience. Take this as an opportunity to get into the Word, read the Bible, see what God might have to say. I mean, he only took 40 people over the course of thousands of years and 66 books and 2 testaments to write everything he wants you to know. So he put a little bit of effort into it. So maybe put a little bit of effort into reading it. Candide is a good one by Voltaire. I think it's the end of Candide. I've read a few books by Voltaire, but it pretty much the meaning to life at the end of a good life is, and it goes into a lot of how people. I'm looking up a book that he did for a reason. He goes into how people are very dissatisfied with their life, and all this bad stuff's happened to me. And he says, go around this ship and ask anybody if something bad has happened to him. And they realize that a lot of things have happened to people on the very ship that they're with. They're feeling so sorry for their self, and a lot of stuff has happened worse than what happened to them. So they learned something out of that. So anyways, I got this tweet. At some point, I'm going to go do a show just on memes. But this meme says, it's by a woke feminazi. I looked at a little bit of the stuff that they were writing. Very woke person here, says, when Mary Shelley wrote Frankenstein in 1818, age 19, there's a few of these memes going around, and they differ on what her age was and everything. There's not a big consensus. But around 20 years old, whatever. Age 1818, or in 1818, age 19, neither Jules Verne nor Orson Welles were born yet. Allan Poe was 9. A teenage girl wrote what is still considered today the first science fiction novel. This article continues the long tradition of erasing her. First of all, great. I know everybody knows what Frankenstein is. great accomplishment. But Voltaire wrote the first sci-fi that I'm aware of. Right? I was looking it up. I can't find it. I believe it's Micromegas. It's about an alien that travels to Earth and picks up some dudes along the way at Saturn and explains a lot of weird, crazy stuff. Very much sci-fi, right? Hooray for Mary Shelley. Sorry, Voltaire still beats you. Some people would argue that I think, hey, Frankenstein, that seems science fiction to me. Some people say it's gothic horror. Some people say it's speculative fiction. Whatever, it's a great thing, but this meme is invalid. So next time, let's talk about Russia. A lot of stuff going on. Let's also pray for Russia. A lot of people are dying. There's another meme that I saw. Sometimes we have to fight wars to save freedom and the future of our children. But children don't win in wars. Bad stuff happens to children. Regardless of how clean you try to fight a war, children are going to suffer. Let's especially pray for the families and the children in Ukraine tonight as we go to bed. People are going to die. Children are going to lose their fathers. Fathers are going to lose their children. Very bad stuff. So remember someday really soon, somebody might be asking for prayer for our children. So, let's not forget the Ukrainian people. Let's not forget Russia either. Not everybody in Russia is bad, right? So, thanks for watching. Subscribe, and like and share if you want to, right? We'll see what we get into next time. That's all I got.